morning, everyone. So as Steve kind of just alluded, I feel like oftentimes when we talk about case studies, we tend to focus on how we win. That's the nature of a case study. But really behind every win is also a line of failures. As a good marketer, you have to fail and you have to learn fast and adapt in order to be able to hit your goals. So what I wanted to do is, do a little bit of behind the curtain look with you guys and be honest about some of the failures that I've had. But that's what's helped me be able to drive a very successful paid social campaign strategy that Facebook actually calls one of the most sophisticated now in the QSR industry. So let's dive in. And of course, starting out with Albert, the only source of knowledge is experience. So again, if you don't fall and if you don't know how to get back up, that's the essence of being able to learn from your mistakes and do better. And a quick housekeeping item, these opinions are my own and not of my employers. So a little about me. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and you can't see it, but that is actually a picture of a superhero parade in Portland because where I'm from is that weird. I've been lucky enough to live in a few different continents and travel to a lot of different countries, so if you ever want to connect and just talk about world travels, I'm always down for that. I went to U of O, and I'm a huge Duck fan. Any alumni out there? Worth a try. My first job, or one of my first jobs, was actually being a laser tag ref in a laser tag arena. And I share that because I feel like as a teenager, that teaches you so much character, being able to break up fights between groups of children and adult. Really prepared me for the franchise world. And then, from the laser tag world, I ended up working in finance. I like numbers, but then realized it's missing a little bit of that creative aspect. So that's where I went to do digital marketing for the automotive industry. And then from one franchise world, found myself into the QSR industry. So from cars to za, and yesterday when I was talking to someone didn't know what za meant. So for those of you who might not know what it is, it's what the cool kids call pizza these days. So that's what the za world. So I work for Papa Murphy's, and just curious, a show of hands of who out there has actually had Papa Murphy's before? Oh, okay, wow, way more than I thought. So we've been around for 40 years, and we're actually the 5th biggest pizza chain in the US. But we are the biggest take and bake concept. So the idea is that we make the pizza fresh, and you bake it in your oven for a lot of you who are familiar with that. We started out on the West Coast, so the headquarters is in Vancouver, Washington, and then we spread out. We're in 37 states and have over 1,300 locations, which surprised a lot of people as I was talking to you over the past few days. So our biggest challenge is, and I'm going to use a lot of memes because I love memes, so please entertain me. So our biggest challenge is that people say, wait, what? We have to pick it up and then we get to bake the pizza? And yes, that is really the magic of the brand. If you've had it, you just have to try it and then you will love it. It's fresh. All the ingredients are made that day. So the cheese is grated that day, the dough is made that day, the vegetables are cut that day. It's fresh. It doesn't come in a box. And you can be the chef, you can be the boss, so you can design your pizza however way you want, and then you bake it on your own time. And it's actually a really great product to have delivered because since it's raw, it doesn't get cold. And you bake it on your own time, and I actually grew up on this brand, and as a family, my mom would pick up the pizza, and we'd gather around, and when you can smell the pizza waft up upstairs, and my sister and I would come down, and you knew it was going to be family night if it was a Papa Murphy's night. And so it really is about bringing people together, and it's that scratch-made pizza experience without the mess, and who doesn't love that? All right, so now that we know a little about me and Papa Murphy's, let's talk about the 7 ways to fail and learn from those failures to be able to drive results. And I will say, we've had a lot of different types of presentations, and mine is not the flashy brand impression building one. Those are really cool to hear about, but this is much more the behind the scenes of how do you optimize a campaign to drive sales. So sorry, no crazy cool videos on my part. All right, so the first way that I've learned failure is by not having clear, aggressive, measurable goals. So I'll walk you guys through an example, because as a team, if you don't know how you're being measured and what your goal is, how can you perform to those standards? So we had a campaign where we decided we want to acquire new customers at a low cost per transaction. That was the objective. So great. And in the QSR industry, I think we have a habit of always looking at year-over-year sales because that's comp. And if you judge us off of that, wow, great. Our campaign, we were up 153% with new customer count. Our online cost per transaction went down, so that's awesome. But if you are just focusing on year-over-year growth, then are you really looking at what your goal was and how you hit that? So because we would wanted to focus on new customers, my goal was actually to hit 200% year-over-year growth. And so why having those clear, aggressive, measurable goals is helpful as a team is so you can go back and say, okay, our costs went down, but according to our goals, we hit 72%. So what does that mean? Was it an aggressive goal, and maybe we need to go back and rethink it? Or no, it was an achievable goal, but what did we do to not fail fast enough, to learn fast enough to get there? And so that's why having those clear goals, aside from just growth and really narrowing it down, has been so crucial. And when you set clear goals and you measure them on a weekly basis, and that weekly measurement is so important, it's hard not to succeed. Because if you're looking at your goals on a weekly basis, you're forced to optimize, you're forced to test and learn, and your chances of actually succeeding are greater. And when you have a measurement in place, it creates transparency. You know what you're doing, your department knows what you're doing, the company knows what you're doing, and it also makes accountability a little bit stronger because you're responsible to hit a certain number of goals, and then it also empowers you because that's your challenge, and can you meet that as a marketing professional? The other part is if you're gonna have aggressive goals, then you need to have a very clear test and learn approach. So the question to ask ourselves is, do we encourage our teams to fail? If your team fails, what is the expectation of them? And so for us, failure is good because that means you tried something, you were not complacent, and you're working towards that goal. So again, having clear goals and working towards them, when we don't do that, that's when we don't succeed. But when we identify opportunities to test towards goals, so again, we want to get new customers. What are different ways we can do that? And then measure, learn, repeat. And really celebrate when we fail really hard, because hey, every time you fail, that's something that you're not going to do again, and it gets you closer to what you can do. And I share that with you because our success was not built on 5 iterations. We have tested over 10,000 iterations of optimization, whether it's audience, first party, third party, the offers we're pushing, the price points that those offers have, the creative, all the way to how much money are we spending towards each of those items on the left, the cadence that we're sending out our messages, the location, are we doing radius targeting, zip code, DMA, the campaign structure. I mean, and this is about a Facebook case, but also these can apply to paid search at large. Ad units, what type of ad units are you using to reach your goals, all the way to the different tools that these platforms offer. And it's a constant test and learn approach to be able to get there, because if you don't have clear goals and if you don't have a schedule of what are we testing, how are we getting there, these 10,000 iterations will overwhelm you. The third thing is, third way to fail is not investing in using your first party data. I am so passionate about this because, and this has come up a few times in the past few days, brands that can access, but accessing your data is not enough. Being able to actually act on your data, you will be the brands that win in the future. Especially with, we all heard the Facebook gate a few years ago when Facebook got rid of some of the custom audiences. Google just came out with news last month saying that they're going to make the cookie tracking obsolete in a few years. So what that means is because of privacy issues, so these third-party ways to track your customers are becoming a little bit less accessible, and being able to have your data and talk to your customers is going to be key. And so how do we fail and what do we learn? This is kind of like the customer targeting 101, where you need to figure out who your customers are through your first-party data and then break them into 3 segments. And we talked about this, I think, in Daisy's roundtable yesterday, is how do you talk to your regular customers? Who are they? What is the cadence? Who are your lapsed customers? So who's falling out of their regular habit? What does that look like? It's different. Pizza is, we eat pizza weekly. Maybe you eat a chicken sandwich weekly too. Most of the QSR is actually weekly purchase, but figuring out what those lap segments are for you, and then also figuring out who your new customers are and how can you create suppression lists, because when you have your own customers, you can exclude them from targeting on different channels and then talk to new customers. So really key to be able to do this in order to succeed as a brand. And when you can do this well, what we've been able to see is that, it is more scalable than social retargeting. It's more scalable than lookalike audiences, than interest targeting, because you're talking to your own customers where they are in their journey, and that's much more efficient than trying to go through these third-party customer segmentations. And the bonus is that when we do this well, and again, there's a lot of failure involved, but when you do it well, we see that our media costs actually cut in half because of how efficient it is to figure out how to talk to your customers in the right moment with the right message. And this one, this is where I nerd out. So oftentimes in media, we look at cost per transaction or cost per visit, and that's where we focus on. But what we lose sight of is the future transactions generated by those cohorts of customers. So let me walk you through these examples, and these are mock numbers that I made up. So if I had $100 and I said, okay, how do I maximize the value of those $100? If you're looking at just cost per transaction, so on Facebook, our mock number is $4 cost per transaction online. With Instagram, it's $6. So you're going to say, I'm going to put my money in Facebook because that's where I can get the most number of transactions. But what if I told you that by tracking your customers and understanding their behavior, the frequency of a Facebook customer is 4.9 times a year. Frequency of an Instagram customer is 6 times a year. And because the Instagram customer is coming more frequently, their annual value is actually higher. So maybe because Instagram aligns more with the segments you're going after, with the target that you need. So this is where focusing on just the initial cost per transaction can be limiting, because you lose sight of the future revenue generated by those customers and the cohorts and the channels that you're using to get them. Number 5 is not leveraging creative to its fullest. So this is kind of an industry benchmark that 49% of the ad performance actually is influenced by the creative. So that's the look and feel and the offer. And when we first started to do paid advertising, we actually saw that our costs fluctuated up to $15 based on the creative that we use, which is ridiculous. It should not be the case. So we had a goal, and we said, let's try to figure out how we can reduce the costs within pennies. We don't want to see a $15 difference. We want to see pennies of difference among our top performers. So we went out and we tested over 2,000 iterations. And again, clear goal, test and learn approach, fail fast, learn hard, repeat. And so here's some of the ways that we failed. We learned that not all creative parts are equal. So what I mean by that is an image is plays much more of a role than the headline or the copy. That's what we found out. Again, it might be different for you. We also found out that people don't want to see people. People don't want to see people eating. People don't really want to see people touching food. They just want to see the product. So again, we learned that through failure. And we also learned that ads are like selfies and that angles matter. And this is a weird one, but we tested a lot of different angles. I swear, the one that works the best is like this type of angle, where it's like the top-down view of the pizza works best. So when we go out now and we're trying to create more digital assets, we tested and we figured out that angle resonates the best. And not all ad units are equal either. Carousels don't really work for the QSR industry. Carousels work really well for the retail world, not for us. And so again, we tested a lot of different things to figure out how do we maximize the creative, and got within pennies of our top performers. So now we take the winners and we test them against new ones, and we're constantly optimizing and making sure that we're not seeing that crazy fluctuation in cost because of the creative performance. Number 6 is failing because you're not going to trust the robots. It is about working smarter, not harder, because Facebook, Google, these platforms are incredibly smart. When I first started to do Facebook advertising, we actually used to set budget per ad setting campaign, and that was a pain. And it's not really efficient because you're telling Facebook, hey, I have this offer, I have this audience, go spend this much in it because I think we should spend this much in it. So here's some of the tools I like that have helped. campaign budget optimization. So what that does is you can essentially have a bunch of different audiences, a bunch of different offers and creative, and what Facebook will do is it will move the budget towards the ones that are driving the most results. So why is that helpful? It's because you're letting the robots do the work and helping and using the robots and the algorithms to help you optimize for what works best. So this is an example to the left here, is we tested a bunch of different offers against a set audience, and this was the ad that performed the best. This creative, this offer, that audience. And dynamic content is another great tool. So again, going back to how big creative is in impacting costs and driving transactions online, dynamic content allows you to upload multiple images and headlines and copy at the same time, and you can run them against each other and let the robots, again, figure out what works well for you, as opposed to running 100 different ads and then trying to figure out, okay, this converted better here. Use the robots. The other part is, this might be a little bit controversial, but DMA versus store level targeting. So we found out through a lot of testing that and this doesn't work as well for smaller DMAs like 1 or 2 stores, but Facebook is actually really smart at figuring out where your customers are with DMA level. Sometimes you don't have to store target to be able to drive the most number of transactions. And again, this worked for us against the goals that we had. And number 7, last but not least, is not knowing when to bring the management in-house. And I know this is probably controversial too, because I'm not saying we shouldn't work with agencies. Agencies are great partners. We have a lot of agencies. But at some point, you have to look and say, does it make sense for me to outsource this as a brand, or does it make sense for me to bring it in-house? For a lot of our digital management, we brought it in-house, and it's been so successful. Our efficiency has increased because when you have such an aggressive test and learn approach, it's so much easier to have it under your own roof and be able to meet and optimize and talk frequently. And so for us, it's been great. But again, it varies based on your needs and what you're looking for. So those have been the ways that I've learned to fail. Thank you for your time, and yeah.
Hedy, thank you so much. Anybody have questions about? Yep, back here.
Hey, Hedy, great presentation. So on the data question, so what types of first-party data are you guys using right now?
What types? We're lucky enough that we have one POS. We don't have multiple. I forgot what brand it was out there, but it hurt my soul to hear that that wasn't a thing. So we're integrating our POS data with our online data, and we're also working with some partners to do credit card matching, and that's how we're able to identify our customers and then look at their repeat behaviors.
Hey, Hedy, Ryan from Poncheros. Couple questions. One, you mentioned dynamic content. Do you have a favorite provider that does that for you? And then on your number 7, what was the moment or the right level of spend that you decided to bring it in-house?
Yeah, so dynamic content is actually a tool within the Facebook platform. So you don't even need to go to anybody else. If you have an in-house team, you can run that yourself, which is what I like about it. And it wasn't really a function of spend that we brought that made us want to come in-house. It was, we had a great agency and we were able to do a lot with them, but we wanted to test and we wanted to keep learning. And when you're at an agency, because you have other clients, their queue is full. So they would say, no, that makes sense. We'll roll this out within 5 days for you. And we're sitting there thinking, okay, well, we could do this within a day, but you have to have the right expertise to be able to do that. But so it wasn't a budget question. It was a matter of, okay, we wanted to go faster, and sometimes it's not possible when you work with a third party, which makes sense because you're one of the many clients that they have.
What have been, finally, what have been, you mentioned moving towards using first-party data and especially leveraging and targeting your existing customers. Where does that leave your prospecting and your customer acquisition strategy relative to this?
Yeah, so I think it actually makes it a lot easier because when you, well, not a lot easier. It makes it easier in some ways and more difficult in others. Because when you're able to figure out who your segments are, then you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to, again, talk to my existing customers, and then being able to suppress and know if you're targeting on Facebook or if you're trying to buy addressable, if you have an exclusion list where you know that you're not targeting your existing customers, that makes your conquesting a little bit easier and it's more true. So I think that's been the way that we're hoping to leverage it more and more, is being able to just figure out what the segments are and then set goals and go after it and keep testing and learning.
And I think finally with both Facebook and now Google as well, both of them are trying to, your point about trust the robots is something I think a lot of marketers have trouble with. And because they both feel as if Facebook and Google, as they move away from micro-targeting towards more segmentation-based targeting, that they're really, they're cooking the algorithms so that they're really going to extract more of your budget. Tell us a little bit more about how you're learning to trust those robots and feel as if the platforms aren't ripping you off.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a combination of going back to one of the points, which was look at the cost per transaction, but then also look at the value of those customers that you acquire. Because I think that's where the value of that channel comes in. Because if you're, you can look at the pixel transactions, and that's Facebook reporting that to you, and yes, they're money-making machines. Facebook and Google want your money. But being able to not only look at the immediate transactions that's generated, but how those customers are behaving in the long term from those channels is how you can kind of validate trusting the robots. Is, okay, are these channels a good investment? Because are the quality of customers that we're getting in these channels high quality? Do they behave similar to our existing clients? Are they even becoming better customers than our existing clients? And so it's kind of that combination again of their data, but also our first-party data that makes it easier to trust the robots.
Hedy, thank you so much. That was a great end.